Back to the next lesson, lesson 5. Lesson 5 is going to show you how we can fix all these components together so that they don't do weird things, and I'll show you what I mean by weird things. First thing I'm going to do in the file tree here is I'm going to turn off all of the sketches so that I won't see any other geometry or accidentally pull geometry from a sketch. We can see we've got our 5 parts: body, washer, handle, axle and key. And at the moment, if I grab, say, one of these by clicking on it and then dragging it, you can see it is not fixed in place. So the first thing I'm going to do to make this job easier is I'm actually going to pull all the pieces apart from each other, because it's actually easier to do this if there's gaps in between all the objects. Alright, so if you're used to some other CAD programs, you're used to commands like mate and so on. Fusion uses some terminology called joints. We're going to put joints between these parts so that they then are in the correct position and that they won't move. So up here in the Assemble tab, you have this one on the right hand side called Joint, and if you click on the Assemble icon, there's some other ones in there as well. We'll just start with the basics, which is Joint. When you click onto Joint, it'll then ask, okay, try that again. Click on the joint. I'm going to say capture position. It just means it's going to keep those out there on the screen. What it's doing, it's saying, okay, which object do you want to move to another object? So because component 1 is going to move to component 2. Now I've just actually made an error here, because what I need to do before I even start putting any joints between all these objects is I need to lock down one of these objects in space, so in the computer's program if you like, so all the other parts move relative to it. Now the most obvious part to lock down would be the complex one, being here the body. So I'm just going to jump out of joints and I'm going to select the body over here, and I'm going to right click, and while I've right clicked holding it down, I'm looking for this icon, or sorry, this text here called ground. When I've ground that, you see that a little pin comes up on the body there, which means that it can't move. Everything else can move relative to it, but it's like stuck in concrete. It's not going to spin around, do all sorts of weird things. And that's important. Even though I've deselected it, you see you've got that pin beside it. Okay, now we can go to the joints command. So I come up to the joint, capture position, and it's selected something already. I'm just going to select this object here. So if you have a look here, this is the key, I should say. I know that I want one of these corners here to end up basically in one of these 2 corners here. So the easiest thing to do is to zoom in with your mouse, and you can see as the mouse gets close to an endpoint, a little triangle appears. A midpoint, there's another triangle, endpoint. And if I zoom in, you can see there's a circle that also surrounds those points, and depending upon which side or which face you have your cursor on, the circle will be either parallel with that face, or you can see the circle is parallel with that face. So I want this face and the bottom left hand corner of it, which if I click there, I don't need to be right on it. If I click there once, it's then stored that position on that keyway as the first component. Now I can zoom it back out and zoom in, and then I can pick the corresponding spot that I want it over here. So I want that corner to line up, not with the midpoint, but with this endpoint. But you can see that the orientation of the circle is incorrect. So I move it down a little bit to put on the vertical face, so I get the 2 circles in the same plane. Select. Okay, and it's not gone to the correct spot, so what I can do is then hit the flip button, and it's flipped it around, because there's 2 options, I suppose. That's that flip button just there. Now down the bottom here, the motion type, or the type of joint, is called rigid. You have different types of joints for what you want the parts to be able to do. In this case, I want that key to be stuck in, or rigid, to the actual body, so that rigid is the correct joint type or correct motion type. When it's on rigid and you click animate, it just gives this little shake to show that nothing can go anywhere, I suppose. Stop the animation and click OK. The first joint's been applied. You can see a little icon here coming up with joints, and also joints has now appeared in the file tree. You can turn them off like anything else so you can't see them, or you can turn them on or individually on and off as well if things are getting hard to see. I'm going to leave them on now just for argument's sake. What I might do is just collapse that sketches though. Alright, so the second thing I'm going to bring in is going to be the axle. And I'm going to go now to joints because it's a new joint. And I'm going to choose this bottom little left hand corner here. Wait for the correct orientation, click once there. And you can see it's stored it. And this wants to be rigid, it wants to come to this point here. And you can see that as I've moved the cursor to different positions, it's going to pre-highlight the desired position. And in it comes, it's spun it the wrong way again, so hit flip. And you can see it's now correct. And we click OK. So that's two that have been done. Okay, now the last two are going to be the washer and the handle. So the surface of the body here is going to go to that surface there of the washer. So click on the joints again. This time I'm going to select, if you can, I might just turn that around, shift and my keypad. And I'm going to hold my cursor on that surface. And as I move it to the edge, you'll notice that the middle actually highlights. Can you see that? So move it to the edge, the middle highlights, which means it's selecting the center of that cylinder as its location point. So I click once there, use my shift and my trackpad, excuse me, and I'm going to spin this around, and the same deal here. I want those two faces to touch each other and I want them to be centered. So you can see as I put it to the edge there, it's not going to try to move that center to the edge because you can see that the center highlights as I go over it. I'll get to do it, there it is there, click once for there. And yep, that's a rigid constraint between those two is correct as well. So we can OK that. And the last joint, okay, let's finish off the assembly of these parts, or if you like, putting the joints on. So we're going to join the handle to the washer, and that means that we need to select the handle first and the washer second so they don't move, or the washer doesn't move. So let's choose joint, capture position. Let's choose the surface that we want from the handle first, which is going to be this surface here. There's the center highlighted as well, which is what I'm after. Click once, that's the point that's going to go to this point here. So we hold shift down and trackpad, and it's going to be to this surface here. And you can see now it's put that same rigid constraint on. If you click on the motion tab and click on the type, this time I want you to choose the revolute command. Now, as you can see with this sort of little flag here, it actually would allow, whoops, stuff that up. It actually allows this to spin around. Oh, I keep grabbing the wrong thing, sorry guys. I'll go back to 0, 0, 0, that's correct. I'll grab it out here. It's a bit hard to, here we go. There we go, and grab it there, and I don't know if you can see that actually spinning around through all those degrees. So if we were doing an animation later on or something like that, we'd be able to get this to spin at the same time as the crank going around. So we apply that revolute constraint, and we click OK. And we should now have 1, 2, 3, there should be 4 constraints. There we go. If you look over here in joints, 1, 2, 3, 4 joints holding all the parts together. So if I now was to click on one of these, I can't drag any of them anywhere because they're all tied together. Cool. All right, hit save. And then we're ready to start doing some rendering and some drawing.